All right, I've got my sketch. I've got my best exposures selected. Let me take all of those and put them into a folder of best exposures, and then let me open up the ones that I identified. Select the multiples, right-click, open them with Photoshop. And now I got the aperture effects I wanted. If I float them all in Windows by going to Window, Arrange, Float All in Windows, I can hit F9 and see them all individually. And look, they're even in order for me. So here I have my first frame, introducing this robot. Here I have the second frame, introducing the next robot. And here I pull away and see everything. What can I do with processing to help bring this out? Well, one thing I'm not thrilled with is the color. The color looks very bland. So what I want to do is pick a frame where I can kind of experiment a little bit with how I want to tell this story, the tone I want it to have. And then I'm going to use whatever I did in that frame to help inform how I process the others. Now we've done something similar to this before with our texture studies, when we worked on one and then we carried over all of the adjustment layers onto our other frames. Okay, one thing I wanted you to try to focus on is just using the native format of your camera. So not cropping in to fix your composition. Because storytelling has a lot to do with composition and controlling that. But little things can happen. And when I view through my viewfinder, I don't see everything, especially at the very edges that my camera captures. So for instance, that little shadow from a frame on my wall snuck in there. So first of all, I'm just going to clean this up. So how do I do that? I'm going to make a duplicate. And before I do anything else, I'm just going to fix that one little area. And I'll do it by using my lasso tool and lassoing around it, and then saying Edit, Fill. I'm going to try just content aware. Since it's just an even gradation, it would be hard for me to paint that or to even do it with clone stamp really accurately. So I'm hoping this will fill it in for me seamlessly. And sure enough, it did. And we're going for the most kind of finished frames we can, where we consider everything. And I like this frame because the circle of the clock kind of contains all the way, and even the hands of the clock are a little bit more dynamic. I also want to check the focus of this frame. So if I zoom in on my robot, the character I'm supposed to be introducing, is the focus good? And it's nice and sharp. This can be hard to do with your camera. So notice that he's in focus, but even the text behind him is out of focus. And that his hand is in focus just as much as his body. And that this clip in front is in focus. So how did I get that? Well, you can do it through manual focus, right? Or you can do it through automatic focus and focus locking. And because this toy is at the same depth as the football, the clip, my glasses case, the clock, there's little parts like the hands of the clock are in sharp focus with my to-do list mug. All of that's in sharp focus because it's the same distance away from the lens. But if we go back just a little bit to the journals back here, to the pennant on the wall, to my door, it all pulls away. But that first adjustment I made, just with that little shadow, that helps my composition a lot. So details matter. Next, I might decide that this is a little boring down here, and I might want to vignette it a little bit. So I'm going to use my dodge tool. Sorry, my burn tool rather. Nice big brush, a low exposure, midtones, I'm just going to hit that corner a little bit. See if that helps bring the eye in without overdoing it. I might even play with vignetting it in here, darkening it slightly out here. Just a tiny bit. I think that helps, kind of deepening that focus in towards the middle. Tunnel vision. Do it really lightly. Just hit the top. Okay, so selective dodging and burning. In the same way, this is before I do any all-over adjustments, because I'm going to do those with adjustment layers. I might use my dodge and burn tool selectively. So my focus is good, but maybe I want to darken some elements on this character. There's very bright colors. Maybe I want to deepen the mid-tone shadows around the head, for instance, around the hands. And then same thing, maybe I want to dodge the midtones just slightly with a very soft-edged brush. Brighten the head a little bit. Brighten the core highlights on the arm. I shot this with a flash that I modified and softened because it helps bring out these core highlights and shadows on the plastics that I was shooting, so they feel a little bit heightened and exciting. Okay, now what is distracting from my story? Well, this Nighthawk football. It's becoming kind of a focal point, and I didn't really think of it, but it almost looks like a football story, right? Like they're fighting over the ball or they're about to rush it. Except that the football doesn't show up in the first frame. So in this case, I see it as a bit of a distraction. So I'm going to go ahead and burn that down a little. First, the midtones. Very subtly, only at 5%, but it still makes a big difference. Start around the edges and work my way towards the highlights. Really helping to bring it out. Same thing, this core highlight is a little bit strong. Just knock that down a few steps. My pins. The shadow behind him. My glasses case. Just trying to heighten that moment as much as possible. Before I do my all-over processing. Okay, so I think that all helps. Everything I've done now in just one copy layer. Has served to heighten the story in that moment. Kind of looks like he's surprised a little bit. All right. So you can do a lot with just dodge and burn. Now, I want to adjust the whole thing. So let me save it. And I'm going to save it as Carl depth exposure 1. Actually, this is number 2 in my sequence, isn't it? Save it to the desktop as a Photoshop file. I've already made dramatic changes, but I haven't done any of the all-over processing. And now what I'm going to do is do them not as direct image adjustments, but instead as layer adjustments. So I go to Layer, New Adjustment Layer, and First Levels. And now the histogram is very dark. It's a moody shot. I want to see if I up my highlights, do I lose content? And sure enough, I do, because I have these core highlights from using the soft flash. And I want to keep those because of the plastics. So the only thing that's really safe is shifting my midtones. And maybe just a touch darker. If I push my shadows any darker, I'm going to lose content too. Okay, so that's my first adjustment. And does it improve? Yes, it helps get it all in there. It also just takes away from the distraction of like my door and the stuff behind my door. Okay, now a new adjustment layer. My favorite, color balance. First, the midtones. There's a lot of yellow, so I'm going to try to put a little bit of blue and cyan into there so that those reds really pop. There's a lot of green, unfortunately. Not a big fan of the fluorescent green, but it's a local color. I go to my highlights, maybe bring out the yellows a little bit, maybe bring out the reds a little bit, just in the highlights. So this is a little like cross-processing. Then in the shadows, bring out the cools a little bit more, especially the cyan. And I'm the kind of guy that needs to push it in each direction before I can tell what I like. Okay? That makes a huge difference, right? Let me zoom in and make sure it didn't oversimplify anything. So now the focus is very much on the reds and the yellows. Big change there, just with color balance. All right. So I'm pretty happy with that right now. So I say File, Save. Okay, now I'm going to do the same thing to my first frame here. First, I make a duplicate of it. I see if there's anything that's just distractingly wrong. And there's a lot of dust on my in focus big bully robot. And but the only one that really bugs me, I'll do a little spot correction, is that one right there. Maybe that one right there. So use the spot healing brush, take care of these. Soft edged. Little touch-ups. I don't mind some of the dust, and I like that I'm actually looking past his wing and focusing on the textures and all the intricacies of this. And I love how out of focus the background is in this shot. I also have this little glint glare from my ceramic mug, but I don't think that that's too distracting. Is there anything else compositionally, especially looking at the edges? Compositionally, I do have a slight tangency right here. This is getting picky. Let me show you. Where the edge of that thumb is resting right against the edge of the frame. And that's not ideal. So what I'm going to do, because I'm not going to change my cropping, is I'm going